My name is Lily, and if someone had told me 3 years ago that my own sister would destroy the happiest day of my life, only to lose her own wedding because of the lies she created, I would have laughed in their face. Growing up, people always called us inseparable. Emma was my older sister by 2 years. She was louder, prettier, more confident, and somehow always became the center of attention no matter where we went. I admired her when we were kids. I copied her hairstyles. I borrowed her clothes. When people complimented her, I felt proud just standing beside her. But somewhere along the way, admiration turned into competition, though I didn't realize I was competing. She did. Looking back now, the signs were everywhere. Every achievement I celebrated somehow became about her. When I graduated college, she announced her promotion at dinner. When I bought my first apartment, she complained that no one appreciated how stressful renting was for her. When Daniel proposed to me under a sky full of fireworks during our vacation, I thought, for the first time in my life, that I could have one moment that belonged only to me. I couldn't have been more wrong. Because 3 weeks later, during our engagement party, my sister stood up in front of everyone we loved and accused Daniel of cheating on me. The room went silent. My fiancé looked completely shocked. My mother burst into tears. Guests started whispering. Someone actually left the party because they thought they were witnessing the end of our relationship. And the worst part? Emma had proof. Pictures. Messages. A woman claiming she'd been seeing Daniel for months. By the end of that night, my engagement was in ruins. My family blamed Daniel. My friends pitied me. And my sister became the hero who supposedly saved me from marrying a liar. I believed her. Until almost a year later. When one tiny mistake uncovered a secret so devastating that it didn't just destroy Emma's wedding. It destroyed the life she'd spent years carefully building. People always assume family betrayal happens because of money. Sometimes it's inheritance. Sometimes it's property. Sometimes it's business. In our case, it was something much simpler. Attention. My parents never admitted they had favorites, but everyone knew Emma could do no wrong. If she forgot my birthday, she's busy. If I forgot hers, Lily, you need to make more effort. That was our family. I learned early that keeping the peace was easier than arguing. Emma loved being admired. She posted every achievement online. Every vacation. Every dinner. Every expensive purchase. She wasn't a bad person, not back then. She was just someone who needed everyone looking at her. I was different. I worked as a graphic designer for a marketing agency. Quiet life. Small apartment. A few close friends. Weekend coffee with my parents. Nothing glamorous. Then I met Daniel. Our first date lasted 6 hours. We laughed until the restaurant closed. Neither of us wanted to leave. You know, he smiled as we walked to my car. I've never met someone who actually listens instead of waiting for their turn to talk. I laughed. I've never met someone who admits they're nervous on a first date. I figured honesty was worth trying. It worked. Over the next 3 years, Daniel became my best friend. He remembered tiny things. My favorite coffee order. The name of my childhood dog. The songs I secretly loved but pretended were embarrassing. He made ordinary days feel special. Even Emma seemed to like him. Finally, she joked one Christmas, someone normal. Everyone laughed. Including Daniel. Looking back, I wish I'd paid closer attention to the way she watched him. Not romantically. Calculatingly. As if she were studying something. Testing something. I ignored it. Why wouldn't I? She was my sister. When Daniel proposed during our trip to Colorado, I cried so hard I couldn't even answer. He laughed. Is that a yes? I nodded before finally managing to whisper, yes. It was perfect. Simple. Private. Everything I'd ever wanted. When we came home, everyone celebrated. Even Emma hugged me. I'm so happy for you. She smiled. You deserve this. Those words meant everything to me. Planning the engagement party became a family project. Mom handled decorations. Dad organized food. Daniel's parents offered to pay for the photographer. Emma insisted on coordinating the event. I know exactly how to make this unforgettable. She sounded excited. I thanked her over and over. One evening while we were choosing decorations, Daniel quietly pulled me aside. Can I ask you something? Of course. Has Emma always been this involved? What do you mean? I don't know. He hesitated. Sometimes it feels like she's trying to control every decision. I laughed. That's just Emma. You sure? Positive. He nodded. If you're happy, I'm happy. I kissed him. I am. For the next month everything seemed perfect. Family dinners. Wedding planning. Venue tours. Cake tastings. Late-night conversations about our future. I honestly believed life couldn't get any better. Then little things started happening. Emma would ask strange questions. So. Daniel works late a lot. Sometimes. Does he travel alone? Occasionally. Do you know all of his coworkers? I shrugged. Not really. I thought she was just making conversation. One afternoon she even asked, if someone cheated on you, would you want to know? Of course. Even if it ruined your life. Better than living a lie. She smiled strangely. I agree. Something about that conversation stayed with me. Not enough to worry. Just enough to remember. The engagement party arrived on a warm Saturday evening. Nearly 70 people came. Friends. Family. Co-workers. Neighbors. Everyone was smiling. The speeches began. Dad spoke first. Then Daniel's father. Then my maid of honor. Everything felt magical. Until Emma slowly stood up holding a wine glass. I'd like to say something. Everyone clapped. She smiled at me. Then looked at Daniel. I love my sister too much to let her make the biggest mistake of her life. Every conversation stopped. Daniel frowned. I felt my stomach tighten. And then. Emma reached into her purse. And pulled out a thick envelope. The moment she opened it, I knew our lives were about to change forever. Emma slid a thick white envelope onto the microphone stand. The room had gone so quiet that I could hear the air conditioner humming behind me. She looked around at everyone before turning to me. Lily. I wish I didn't have to do this. A knot formed in my stomach. What are you talking about? I asked. She took a slow breath, almost as if she were preparing herself for something painful. I found out Daniel has been cheating on you. The words hit me like a physical blow. Someone in the crowd gasped. Daniel stared at her in disbelief. What? He said. Emma ignored him. She pulled several printed photographs from the envelope and held them up. This is him. The photographer instinctively lowered his camera. Guests leaned forward, whispering to each other. Emma walked over and handed me the pictures. The first showed Daniel sitting at a cafe across from an attractive brunette. The second showed them walking side by side outside an office building. The third captured what looked like the woman touching his arm while they laughed together. I felt my hands begin to shake. What is this? I whispered. Daniel stepped closer. Lily, let me see those. Emma immediately blocked him. No. She deserves to hear the truth first. Daniel's expression hardened. There is no truth because none of this means what you're trying to make it mean. Emma reached back into the envelope. Oh. Then maybe these will explain it. She placed several printed screenshots into my hands. Text messages. The contact name simply read, D. One message said, I can't wait until she's finally out of the picture. Another read, dinner tomorrow. Same hotel. My vision blurred. Daniel looked genuinely confused. I've never sent those messages. Emma folded her arms. So now you're saying they're fake? Because they are. His voice echoed through the hall. The room erupted with whispers. My mother covered her mouth. Dad stood up from his chair. Daniel, he said firmly, you need to explain yourself. I am trying to. Daniel looked directly at me. Lily, please look at me. I couldn't. My mind was racing. The photos looked real. The messages looked real. Nothing made sense. Emma gently placed a hand on my shoulder. I hired a private investigator after I noticed him acting strangely. You, what? I asked. I wanted to protect you. Daniel let out a bitter laugh. A private investigator. Seriously? Emma nodded confidently. He followed Daniel for weeks. She reached into the envelope once more and produced what looked like an official report. There are dates, locations, everything. People began looking at Daniel differently. The warmth that had filled the room only minutes earlier disappeared completely. One of Daniel's friends stepped toward him. Man. Is any of this true? No. Daniel snapped. This is insane. He turned to me again. Lily, you've known me for 3 years. I know. Then trust me. Before I could answer, the brunette from the photographs suddenly walked into the banquet hall. Every head turned. Emma smiled as though everything was going exactly according to plan. There she is. The woman looked nervous. She glanced around before stopping a few feet from us. Emma asked softly, would you please tell Lily what you told me? The woman lowered her eyes. I've been seeing Daniel for almost 6 months. The room exploded. No. I whispered. Daniel stared at the woman as if he'd never seen her before. I don't even know who you are. She looked directly at him. You promised you'd leave her after the wedding plans were over. Daniel's face filled with disbelief. That's a lie. She reached into her purse and produced a silver watch. I think you forgot this at my apartment. She held it up. My heart sank. It looked exactly like Daniel's favorite watch. He instinctively checked his wrist. His watch was gone. I lost that weeks ago. Emma immediately spoke over him. Convenient. Daniel rubbed both hands through his hair. This is a setup. Nobody answered. Nobody defended him. Even his own parents looked uncertain. I could barely breathe. Every piece of evidence pointed in one direction. Yet the man standing in front of me looked genuinely devastated. He wasn't angry. He wasn't making excuses. He looked confused. As if someone had dropped him into a nightmare he couldn't understand. Lily, he said quietly, his voice breaking, please don't make a decision tonight. Tears streamed down my face. I don't know what to believe anymore. Without another word, I removed my engagement ring. The entire room watched in stunned silence as I placed it in Daniel's trembling hand. His eyes filled with tears. So this is it. I couldn't answer. I simply turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard guests arguing, chairs scraping across the floor, and Daniel repeatedly calling my name. But one sound stood out above all the others. Emma's quiet sigh of satisfaction. At that moment, I believed my sister had just saved me from the biggest mistake of my life. I had no idea. She had actually destroyed the only person who had never lied to me. And before the night was over, an unexpected phone call would reveal the first tiny crack in Emma's perfect story. I barely remember how I got home that night. One minute I was standing in front of 70 stunned guests, handing my engagement ring back to the man I loved. The next, I was sitting on my living room floor, still wearing the dress I'd spent weeks choosing for what was supposed to be one of the happiest nights of my life. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Friends. Family. Coworkers. Everyone wanted to know if I was okay. I ignored every call except one. It was Emma. "Lily," she said gently. "Can I come over?" 20 minutes later, she arrived carrying takeout and a bag of groceries. She hugged me the second I opened the door. "I'm so sorry." I completely broke down. She held me while I cried until I couldn't breathe anymore. "I should have told you sooner," she whispered. I needed proof before I could risk hurting you." I nodded against her shoulder. At that moment, I truly believed she had sacrificed her relationship with Daniel just to protect me. The next morning, Daniel called. I watched his name flash across my phone over and over. I couldn't answer. Eventually, he left a voicemail. "Lily, please listen to me. I don't know who that woman is. I have never cheated on you. Whatever Emma is doing, I promise you there's an explanation. Please, just meet me once before you decide our future." His voice cracked before the message ended. I deleted it. Not because I hated him. Because hearing him hurt too much. Over the next week, my entire life changed. The engagement photos disappeared from social media. Wedding vendors started calling about cancellations. Deposits were lost. Our honeymoon reservation was refunded. Every notification felt like another piece of my future disappearing. Then came the gossip. At work, conversations stopped when I entered the break room. People smiled with sympathy. "I'm sorry. You deserve better." "I can't believe he fooled everyone." I simply thanked them. Correcting them would have meant defending a man I no longer knew whether to trust. Daniel wasn't doing much better. One afternoon, my friend Chloe called. "I just saw him." "Where?" "Outside the coffee shop near your apartment." "How did he look?" She hesitated. "Broken." I didn't respond. "He wasn't with another woman, Lily." Silence. He was alone. I ended the conversation quickly. I wasn't ready to hear anything that might make me question my decision. A few days later, Daniel's mother knocked on my door. She looked exhausted. "I won't stay long." I invited her inside. She placed a small envelope on my coffee table. "Daniel asked me to give you this. I don't think that's a good idea. Please." After she left, I stared at the envelope for nearly an hour before finally opening it. Inside was a handwritten letter. Not excuses. Not arguments. Just memories. He wrote about our first date. The day we adopted our dog. The trip where he proposed. He ended with one sentence. "If you ever discover the truth, I hope it isn't too late for us." I folded the letter and locked it inside a drawer. I told myself I was closing that chapter forever. Meanwhile, Emma became everyone's hero. Family members praised her courage. "You saved Lily. You were brave enough to do what nobody else would." Even my parents couldn't stop thanking her. Mom hugged her during Sunday dinner. "I don't know what we would have done without you." Emma smiled modestly. I only did what any sister would do. Everyone believed her. Including me. But not everyone. About 2 weeks after the engagement party, I received an unexpected phone call. The number was unfamiliar. Hello? A man's voice answered. Is this Lily Carter? Yes. My name is Michael. Okay. I work for the private investigation company your sister claimed she hired. My heart skipped a beat. I was told you might contact us eventually. I stood up. What do you mean? There was a long pause. I'm calling because we have no record of ever working for your sister. I froze. What? We've never investigated Daniel. My grip tightened around the phone. Are you sure? I'm absolutely certain. My pulse raced. If that's true. The investigator interrupted quietly. Miss Carter. Someone used our company's name without permission. The call ended. I stood in my kitchen for several minutes without moving. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Emma hired a different investigator. Maybe there was a simple explanation. That's what I wanted to believe. But for the first time since my engagement party, I wasn't questioning Daniel. I was questioning my sister. And I had no idea that before the week was over, I would uncover a piece of evidence so shocking that it would force me to secretly investigate the person I had trusted most. The truth was beginning to surface. And Emma had no idea her perfect lie was starting to unravel. For 2 days, I convinced myself there had to be an innocent explanation. Maybe the investigator had made a mistake. Maybe Emma had hired a freelance investigator instead of the company she mentioned. Maybe I was desperately looking for reasons to believe Daniel because I still loved him. But every time I replayed the engagement party in my head, one detail kept bothering me. Emma had been too prepared. The speech. The photographs. The text messages. The mystery woman. Everything had happened with perfect timing, almost like a performance. The more I thought about it, the less spontaneous it seemed. I couldn't ignore the feeling anymore. Instead of confronting Emma, I decided to quietly verify every piece of evidence she'd shown me. I started with the photographs. One evening after work, I enlarged the digital copy she'd texted me after the party. At first, they looked convincing. Then I noticed something odd. In one photo, Daniel was wearing a blue tie. In the next photo, supposedly taken only minutes later, he was wearing no tie at all. The cafe receipt visible in the background showed a date from nearly 5 months earlier. Another picture showed autumn decorations hanging from nearby streetlights. Our engagement party had taken place in the middle of summer. The timeline didn't make sense. Had the pictures been taken months apart? Or were they being presented out of context? The next morning, I drove to the cafe. The manager recognized Daniel immediately. Oh, him, she smiled. He comes here every Thursday. My stomach tightened. Usually with a woman. She nodded. Yes. I closed my eyes. Maybe Emma had been right after all. Then the manager continued. She's one of his clients. What? They've been working together on some nonprofit fundraising project. Very polite people. I stared at her. Are you sure? She laughed. They've held meetings here for months. Half the staff knows them. Months. Business meetings. Not secret dates. That was the first crack. The second came later that afternoon. I visited Daniel's office without telling him. The receptionist greeted me kindly. I'm sorry to bother you, I said, but I'm trying to confirm something. I showed her one of the photographs. Oh, that's Melissa. The woman in the picture. Yes. What does she do? The receptionist smiled. She's the director of the Carter Children's Foundation. Daniel's company has been designing their charity campaign. Everything inside me went cold. No affair. No hidden girlfriend. A professional client. I thanked her and hurried back to my car, my hands shaking so badly I could barely start the engine. If Emma knew Melissa was a client, why would she tell everyone she was Daniel's mistress? That question haunted me until another answer found me. 3 nights later, Chloe called. Lily. I found something. What is it? You remember my cousin Ava? The wedding photographer. Yes. She wasn't working your engagement party. But she was editing another event last week. I frowned. What does that have to do with Emma? Ava recognized the brunette from your party. My heartbeat quickened. How? Because she photographed her wedding rehearsal 2 years ago. I don't understand. Lily. Chloe hesitated. That woman is an actress. Silence. What? Not Hollywood famous or anything. She does local commercials, promotional videos, and event acting. I nearly dropped the phone. You're sure? Ava sent me her portfolio. Seconds later, my phone buzzed. There she was. The same woman who had stood in front of 70 guests claiming she'd had an affair with my fiancé. Only now she was smiling in advertisements for insurance companies, hospitals, and furniture stores. An actress. Paid to play different roles. My entire body went numb. The affair had been staged. I immediately called Daniel. He answered on the first ring. Lily. I need to ask you something. His voice became cautious. Anything. Did you ever meet the woman from the engagement party before that night? No. Never. I swear. I believed him. For the first time in weeks. I truly believed him. I owe you an apology, I whispered. There was a long silence. Then he quietly asked, do you finally see it? Tears rolled down my face. I think someone set us up. Daniel let out a slow, painful breath. I've been trying to tell you that since the beginning. I felt sick. Not because of what Daniel had done. But because of what I had done. I had abandoned the man I loved without giving him a chance to prove his innocence. And the person responsible was my own sister. But one question still remained. Why? The answer arrived sooner than either of us expected. Because while Daniel and I were beginning to uncover Emma's lies, Emma was busy planning the biggest day of her own life. Her wedding. And hidden inside a forgotten email account was a message that would finally reveal the real reason she had destroyed my engagement. A reason far more selfish. And far more terrifying than either of us had imagined. After my call with Daniel, we agreed on one thing. We couldn't confront Emma without undeniable proof. She had fooled our entire family once. If we accused her with nothing but suspicions, she'd find a way to make us look paranoid. So we started gathering evidence. For the first time since our engagement fell apart, Daniel and I met in person. The moment I saw him sitting alone in a quiet coffee shop, my heart sank. He looked thinner. The easy smile I loved was gone. Dark circles framed his eyes. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, I whispered, I'm sorry. Daniel looked at me with sadness rather than anger. I don't blame you. I should have trusted you. You trusted your sister. That hurt even more because it was true. I just wish you'd listened to me before walking away. Tears filled my eyes. So do I. He reached across the table and gently squeezed my hand. We can't change what happened. But we can find out why. That became our mission. Over the next week, Chloe helped us piece together everything she could find about the actress from the engagement party. Her real name was Rachel. She had worked promotional events, commercials, and corporate training videos. She wasn't difficult to find. Daniel contacted her through her public business email, asking to meet. To our surprise, she agreed. When Rachel walked into the cafe, she looked nervous before she even sat down. "I know why you're here," she said quietly. Daniel didn't waste time. "Who hired you?" She looked down at her coffee. "I signed a confidentiality agreement." "This isn't about business anymore," I said. My life was destroyed. Rachel's shoulders slumped. "I didn't know that. What did you think was happening?" She hesitated. "I was told it was a staged intervention." Daniel frowned. "A what?" "Your sister said you had been emotionally abusing Lily. She claimed you were controlling her and that the family wanted to stage a fake affair to convince Lily to leave safely." I stared at her in disbelief. "She told you that?" Rachel nodded. "She said everyone involved already knew it was fake." My stomach twisted. "So you accepted money to lie in front of 70 people?" Rachel's eyes filled with guilt. "I know how terrible it sounds." "How much?" She looked embarrassed. $5,000. Daniel leaned back in his chair, stunned. Rachel opened her purse. "I've wanted to tell someone the truth for weeks." She placed printed bank transfer records on the table. The sender's name was unmistakable. Emma Carter. There it was. The proof we'd been searching for. I felt physically sick. My own sister had paid someone to pretend she was Daniel's mistress. But the worst revelation was still waiting. Rachel pulled out one more document. I wasn't supposed to keep this. It was a printed email. The subject line read, "Wedding Timeline." At first, I didn't understand. Then I noticed the date. Emma had sent it nearly 2 months before Daniel proposed to me. My pulse quickened. I read the first sentence aloud. "If Lily gets engaged before my wedding, everyone will focus on her instead of me. I need this handled before invitations go out." I couldn't breathe. Daniel gently took the paper from my trembling hands and kept reading. The email continued. "Once the engagement is over, nobody will question why she isn't at the center of attention anymore." Every word felt like another knife. This hadn't been revenge. It hadn't been about protecting me. It hadn't even been about Daniel. Emma had destroyed my future because she couldn't stand sharing attention during her own wedding year. Years of strange behavior suddenly made sense. Every birthday. Every graduation. Every celebration she'd interrupted. This was who she had always been. She just hadn't crossed a line this far before. Daniel looked at me quietly. "What do you want to do?" I stared at the papers covering the table. "I don't want revenge." "What do you want?" "I want the truth." Unfortunately, the truth was about to become public in the worst possible way. Emma's wedding was only 4 days away. Nearly 200 guests had already confirmed they were coming. Our parents had spent thousands of dollars helping pay for it. The venue was booked. The flowers were ordered. The cake was finished. And none of them knew the bride had built her happiness on a devastating lie. Then my phone rang. It was my mother. Her cheerful voice filled the speaker. "Lily, I know things have been difficult, but your sister really wants you at the wedding." I closed my eyes. Mom continued, "It would mean the world to her." I looked at the bank records. The fake emails. The actress's confession. The message proving Emma had planned everything months in advance. She wanted me smiling in the front row, watching her have the wedding she'd stolen from me. I quietly answered, "I'll be there." Because for the first time since my engagement party, I wasn't going as a guest. I was going with the truth. And before Emma reached the altar, everyone she had deceived would finally learn the real reason my engagement had been destroyed. The morning of Emma's wedding was bright and beautiful. The kind of day people describe as perfect. The venue overlooked a lake, white roses lined the aisle, and soft music drifted through the gardens as guests arrived dressed in their best. If someone had walked in without knowing the truth, they would have thought it was the beginning of a fairy tale. I stood near the entrance, clutching a small folder against my chest. Inside were copies of everything. Rachel's signed statement. The bank transfer showing Emma's payment. The emails. The timeline. Even a recording Rachel had agreed to make, admitting exactly what Emma had hired her to do. Daniel stood a few feet away. We weren't together again, not yet. Too much had happened for everything to magically heal overnight. But he was there because this wasn't just my fight anymore. It was his too. You ready? He asked quietly. I took a deep breath. No. He gave me a small smile. Neither am I. Before the ceremony began, my mother hurried over. Lily. I'm so happy you came. She hugged me tightly. I knew you and Emma would work things out. I forced a weak smile. I hope we will. Those words carried a completely different meaning than she realized. Minutes later, Emma appeared at the top of the staircase wearing a stunning white gown. Everyone turned to admire her. She looked radiant. Confident. Victorious. When our eyes met, she smiled. For a brief second, I wondered if she actually believed she'd gotten away with it. Then she noticed Daniel standing beside me. Her smile faltered. Only for a moment. She recovered quickly and whispered as she walked past me, I can't believe you brought him. I looked her straight in the eye. I can't believe what you did to us. Her expression froze. I don't know what you're talking about. You will. Before she could respond, the wedding coordinator announced, it's time. The music began. Guests stood. Emma took her father's arm. She had barely reached the middle of the aisle when another voice echoed across the garden. Stop the ceremony. Everyone turned. Rachel walked through the entrance. A wave of confusion spread through the crowd. Emma's face drained of color. What is she doing here? Rachel stopped beside me. I'm sorry, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. I can't let this continue. Emma immediately shouted, security. But nobody moved. Rachel held up a microphone. I lied at Lily's engagement party. The entire garden fell silent. I never had an affair with Daniel. Gasps rippled through the guests. Emma shook her head violently. She's lying. Rachel continued. I was hired to pretend I was his girlfriend. Daniel stepped forward. Tell them who hired you. Rachel looked directly at Emma. You did. The silence that followed felt endless. Emma laughed nervously. This is ridiculous. Is it? I asked. I opened the folder and handed copies of the bank transfer to my parents, Emma's fiancé, and several close relatives. Look at the sender. My father's hands trembled as he read the document. Mom whispered, Emma. Emma rushed toward them. Don't believe any of this. I calmly placed the printed emails in front of her fiancé, Ryan. He read the first page. Then the second. His expression changed from confusion to disbelief to heartbreak. He slowly looked up at Emma. You wrote this. She tried to grab the papers. They're fake. They came from your email account, I replied. Ryan's voice was barely audible. You said your sister was jealous of you. Emma looked around desperately. No, Ryan, listen to me, I am listening. He held up the email for everyone to see. If Lily gets engaged before my wedding, everyone will focus on her instead of me. Several guests began whispering. Others looked at Emma with open shock. My mother started crying. Dad closed his eyes as though he physically couldn't bear what he was hearing. Emma pointed at me. You planned this. I nodded. No. You did. No, Emma. I took one step closer. You planned this months before Daniel ever proposed. Her breathing became uneven. You've always hated when anyone else was happy. That's not true. When I graduated, you announced your promotion. When I bought my apartment, you made everyone talk about your problems. When I got engaged. My voice cracked. You destroyed my future because you couldn't stand sharing attention. For the first time in her life. Emma had nothing to say. Ryan slowly removed his wedding ring. His hands were shaking. I asked you a week before the wedding if there was anything you hadn't told me. She reached for him. I can explain. No. He stepped backward. I don't even know who you are anymore. With that, he handed his ring to her. I'm not marrying someone capable of destroying her own sister's life. Emma burst into tears. Ryan, please. But he walked away. One by one, members of the wedding party followed him. Then relatives. Then friends. Within minutes, the beautiful venue that had taken months to plan was nearly empty. The music had stopped. The flowers remained untouched. The cake sat waiting for a celebration that would never happen. Emma stood alone in the middle of the aisle, surrounded by decorations. But abandoned by the people she'd spent years trying to impress. She looked at me through tears. You ruined my wedding. I looked back at her, feeling sadness more than anger. No, Emma. You ruined your own wedding. The day you decided to ruin my engagement. As I turned to leave with Daniel, I heard my mother quietly say something to Emma that I never thought I'd hear. We trusted you. And somehow. Those 3 words hurt Emma more than anything else that had happened that day. But even after the wedding collapsed, none of us were prepared for what life would look like once the guests went home. People often imagine that after the truth comes out, everything falls neatly back into place. Real life doesn't work that way. Emma's wedding ended before it ever truly began, but the damage she had caused didn't disappear with the guests. For weeks, our family barely spoke. My parents were devastated. Mom kept replaying every conversation she'd had with Emma, wondering how she had missed the warning signs for so many years. Dad was quieter than I'd ever seen him. One evening, he came to my apartment carrying a small box. Inside were the decorations from my cancelled engagement party. I couldn't throw them away, he said softly. Tears filled my eyes. I'm sorry we didn't believe you, or Daniel. I hugged him tightly. I know you were trying to protect me. He shook his head. No. We believed the person we thought we knew instead of asking enough questions. It wasn't an excuse. It was an apology. And somehow, that mattered. Emma called me dozens of times over the next month. I didn't answer. She left long voicemails. Some were filled with anger. Others with tears. Some blamed Rachel. Some blamed stress. Some even blamed me for exposing her publicly. Not once did she truly accept responsibility for what she had done. Eventually, I received a handwritten letter. It was only 3 pages long. For the first time, there were no excuses. She admitted she had spent most of her life comparing herself to me. Not because I was more successful. But because she believed people loved me without me trying. She confessed that when Daniel proposed, she panicked. She had dreamed of being the center of attention during her wedding year. The idea that our engagement would become everyone's favorite topic consumed her. What started as a plan to delay my wedding turned into a lie she could no longer control. By the time she realized how far things had gone, she was too afraid to admit the truth. I read the letter twice. Then I folded it and placed it back in the envelope. Some apologies arrived too late. About 2 months later, Daniel asked if we could meet one last time. This time, it wasn't to discuss the past. It was simply to see whether there could still be a future. We returned to the same little restaurant where we'd had our first date. At first, conversation felt awkward. Too much had happened. Too much pain stood between us. Finally, I looked at him. "I don't expect you to forgive me." He smiled sadly. "I already have." "You do?" "Lily, you were manipulated by the person you trusted most." I lowered my eyes. I still should have listened. He reached across the table. And I should have realized sooner that something wasn't right. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he pulled something from his jacket pocket. It wasn't an engagement ring. It was the small handwritten letter I'd locked away months earlier. "I kept a copy," he admitted with a smile. "I meant every word." I laughed through my tears. So did I. We didn't rush back into wedding planning. Instead, we started over. Coffee dates. Long walks. Honest conversations. We rebuilt the trust that had been broken, one day at a time. Nearly a year later, Daniel proposed again. This time there were no fireworks. No crowd. No expensive dinner. Just the two of us sitting on a quiet hill overlooking the city at sunset. He smiled nervously. "I know this isn't our first proposal." "It'll be our last," I replied. He laughed. "Is that a yes?" I wrapped my arms around him. "Yes." When we finally got married 6 months later, we kept the ceremony small. Only close friends and family attended. There were no dramatic speeches. No elaborate decorations. No unnecessary attention. Just honesty, laughter, and the people who had earned a place in our lives. Emma wasn't invited. That wasn't done out of revenge. It was done to protect our peace. The hardest lesson I learned wasn't that strangers can lie. It was that the people closest to us sometimes have the greatest ability to hurt us. Love without trust cannot survive. But trust without honesty cannot exist. Forgiveness is possible. Reconciliation isn't always. Today, Daniel and I have a simple rule. Whenever something feels wrong, we talk to each other before believing anyone else. That one habit has saved us from misunderstandings more than once. As for Emma, I genuinely hope she finds a way to become a better person. I don't wake up angry anymore. Holding on to bitterness would only let the past keep controlling my future. But forgiving someone doesn't mean giving them unlimited access to your life. Sometimes the healthiest boundary is distance. Looking back, I no longer think the worst day of my life was the night my engagement fell apart. The worst day would have been never learning the truth at all. Because the truth gave me something that lies never could. A second chance. And this time, I wasn't going to waste it. What would you have done in my situation? Let me know in the comments.